Let's get into America's Next Top Model news, because it seemed like ever since Tyra came out and did that, what was it, Essence speech that, according to Yaya DaCosta, they didn't even know she was going to make an appearance, probably because they wanted to surprise people in case anybody was going to come up in there. Ever since then, it's like a lot of the girls from America's Next Top Model have been kind of weighing in and giving their thoughts on the show. So we had Yaya came out recently. I think we've had other girls that have come out and spoken out about America's Next Top Model. But also now we have Isis King, who was like the first trans model to ever compete, excuse me, on America's Next Top Model back in the day. I think it was 2008. So yeah, so back in the day, Banks welcomed King to join the competition series, in pursuit of a modeling contract worth $100,000. As King impressed, the supermodel with her poses as an extra during a separate ANTM shoot centered around homelessness on Cycle 10 1 year prior. I think she was also homeless at the time. With an invitation and trial for Cycle 11, King graduated from living at the Alley 40 Transitional Housing Program and into the ANTM mansion in Los Angeles, becoming the first openly trans contestant in the show's history, saying, "I first appeared on ANTM just about 18 years ago. Damn, how time flies. And I'm still so fascinated by the effect it had on pop culture. I'm forever grateful for the impact my presence as an openly trans woman had on the contestants and the audience," read King's statement to Entertainment Weekly. It pulled the curtain back on a topic that should not have been controversial as it was. While Banks and the show's judges were adamant on highlighting King at a time when the fashion industry typically represented little in terms of diverse forms of beauty, King's fellow contestants, including Clark Gilmer and Hannah White, were shown making insensitive comments to King regarding her gender. King performed well during her short time on the show, earning a second-place finish on a first photo challenge and became a fan favorite model across a handful of episodes. She was eventually eliminated in 10th place on episode 5, but her pop culture impact was lasting. King later appeared on a 2008 episode of The Tyra Banks Show with a titular host, introducing King to a surgeon who assisted with the model's transition, and she later returned to compete on the show's Cycle 17 All-Star Edition. And I think probably it was because at the time, I don't know, I don't want to say if Tyra probably caved into maybe what was going on in that little silo of a show, because they film the show and then they air it, kind of like RuPaul's Drag Race. But for the most part, it was just like, I guess you saw like how much Isis was liked, because we got to see that representation of a trans girl on a reality series around modeling, and that's not something we've ever seen before. And if I'm not mistaken, wasn't it also revealed on this season's RuPaul's Drag Race when Betsy Johnson was on the episode, and she was like, "I was the first fashion designer to actually incorporate trans models in my runway shows." I know Marco does it, but Marco, that came years later. But Betsy Johnson was doing it. And then when they went and showed when it was mentioned, they showed, I believe, a photo of Isis King on the runway. So I believe that it was Isis who made her appearance on the show, in her runway show, and Betsy Johnson was the one that actually brought in a trans girl to walk the runways. And it's like, it's weird how, like, in these day and ages, we still have like the first one to do this and the first one to do that and all that other stuff. But I'm glad that we have people still out here breaking barriers. And that's when we go back to that original story that I did a couple of episodes ago, where we had Peppermint and Frankie Grande wrote an open letter to the industry where we need more LGBTQ inclusion into reality TV. Because I don't know if they realize this, but when you look at a lot of reality shows, I really feel like the reality TV, not necessarily scripted TV, I think it is to a point with scripted television, but for the most part, you hear so many people, especially with me growing up, a lot of times I would see representations of myself in certain situations when it came to stories that were told on reality TV, particularly like The Real World or shows of that nature. And most recently what we had with Drag Race, even though, yeah, they're all drag queens, but when you hear those stories from those girls, you can relate to a lot of the stuff that they talk about when they talk about homophobia, and then you talk about transphobia, and you talk about like all the things that HIV awareness and sexual assault within the same sex community. When you would hear those stories, like, yeah, those are relatability things, which is why I do feel like reality TV is definitely the place where we can get the more of the representation, where people who are at home and they're watching these shows, they can become more open-minded and more accepting. I don't want to say tolerant, because tolerant feel like, oh, you just accepted me for whatever. And I don't like tolerant because it's like, okay, you're just going with it. So I'm all for just, it makes you come around and really accept people and respect them, because you see people that are different than you that you would never see in your lifetime. And you watch them, it's like, you know what? These people aren't as bad as certain pundits of political parties try to make certain people out to be. So kudos to her for bringing her in on this show. But with me going on that rant, I got to go into what Isis had to say about America's Next Top Model, because she did weigh in to EW. That she said that, yeah, that the show was a difficult experience in select ways, because we also had people who were on the show who were queer on America's Next Top Model. We had Ebony Haith, who was in Cycle 1, and Kim Stolz from Cycle 5, Megan Morris from Cycle 7, and Michelle Babin from Cycle 7. So Isis said the following. She said, was ANTM perfect? No. Would I have had the same success story without bearing my heart for the world to see, hoping the opportunity redirected me from poverty and allowed me to travel the world, follow my dream as an actress, model, and artist? Probably not. Pointing to her, she finishes pointing to her career that has since included modeling shoots, including for American Apparel, her acting work, where she appeared in The Bold and the Beautiful, Shameless, When They See Us, The L Word Generation Q, Good Trouble, Amazons with Love, and the lead role on the Whoopi Goldberg produced reality show Strut. Oh, I do remember that show. Strut I liked, but that only lasted one season. Now, other contestants have echoed King's sentiment about top models for imperfections. In EW's 20th anniversary oral history celebrating the show's 2-decade-long impact on culture since its 2003 launch, 14 contestants spoke about their experiences on the program, with many highlighting issues from on-air sexual misconduct to the show tasking models with wearing dark face makeup to portray different races in photo challenges. Banks herself even recently admitted at the 2025 Essence Black Woman in Hollywood ceremony that she said some dumb shit on the show, but celebrated 24 cycles of changing the world in terms of how the fashion industry saw beauty. Now, in a statement to EW, a spokesperson for Banks said that the controversial shoots that the intention was to combat an industry where lighter skin and straighter hair were pervasive beauty standards that perpetuated deep insecurities within women. The spokesperson maintained that such shoots were meant to be a moment celebrating and spotlighting underrepresented ideologies of beauty, textured hair, and darker skin on a global scale. Now, EP Ken Mock declined to comment, while representatives for producer Laura Fust Silva and creative director Jay Manuel did not respond to EW's multiple questions for comment at the time. And we know that Jay Manuel has come out and said some things in regards of America's Next Top Model and his relationship with Tyra. I believe I forget which interview it was, but he talked about a couple of years ago. I think when he was coming out with a book that was based around his experience, but the names were changed to protect the innocent. So he was doing something like that. But yeah, so a lot of times with these shows, and I know a lot of people come out and they start trying to clown America's Next Top Model, and y'all want to run around and start saying things of like, yeah, it was problematic, and yeah, to a degree it was, but you have to realize that was the time. That was the way that we things were at the time, and now we look back on it and it's like, yeah, it's cringe, and we know not how. When you know better, you do better, and when you know what you shouldn't be doing, and maybe that whole idea about the women in blackface, the intentions might have been great, but the execution was the issue. So I say all this to say, what do you guys think of this story? I mean, in regards to America's Next Top Model, have y'all even started watching America's Next Top Model? And now that they're reviving old shows, like we got Heidi Klum coming back to Project Runway, and I'm still mad at y'all that y'all didn't ask Tim Gunn to come back. But I'm gonna still watch it because Heidi is gonna be coming back. Would you like to see a reboot of America's Next Top Model? I think it might be time to bring that show back, in my opinion. But I know some people might be feeling away. But it will be interesting to see, like, especially in this day and age of the way modeling has changed versus the way it was 20 plus years ago. So let me know what you guys think of this story in the comments down below.